You're tuned in to Beyond the Known. In 1969, after the Apollo 12 mission placed seismic instruments on the moon, NASA intentionally crashed the lunar module back into the surface. What happened next baffled scientists. The moon reverberated like a bell for over an hour. It was as if the moon was hollow. But what if that strange echo wasn't just a geological anomaly? What if it was never natural to begin with?
Welcome back. Tonight, we are turning our gaze upwards, focusing on our constant companion in the night sky, the moon. It feels incredibly familiar, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Always there, charting its course through the darkness, a steady presence we almost take for granted. But look a little closer, start asking questions, and delve into the data and theories that surround it, and you quickly find that our moon is a deeply strange and mysterious place.
It really is. We've pulled together a fascinating collection of information for this episode. Scientific reports, historical accounts, speculative theories, even, discussions from online communities. It's quite a mix.
A real range. Yeah, a body of material that touches on everything from the precise physics of orbital mechanics to some truly, mind-bending ideas about the moon's true nature.
And that's our mission tonight. To explore all of it, to dig into the established science, weigh it against the more, let's say, unconventional ideas presented in this research, and try to understand what's really going on up there.
Is it natural?
Is the moon simply a natural satellite, a product of cosmic chance, or is there something far more deliberate, maybe, about its presence? Let's start with the basics, or what feels like basics. The moon is just there. It orbits Earth. Seems simple enough.
Seems simple.
But when you examine its position and behavior relative to Earth and the sun, things get interesting. Really interesting. Why is it in such a seemingly perfect place? Why does it behave in these particular ways that seem almost well-designed?
Well, from the perspective of orbital mechanics, there are some well-understood phenomena at play. Take tidal locking, for instance.
Okay.
This is a direct consequence of the gravitational interaction between Earth and the moon over billions of years. I mean, a long time.
Right, gravity pulling.
Exactly. The moon's rotation rate has been slowed by Earth's gravity until it matches its orbital period. That's why we only ever see one face of the moon from Earth. It's a fairly common outcome of tidal forces between a larger and smaller body.
Right. Okay, tidal locking is explained by physics. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at something like a total solar eclipse, and it feels less like simple physics and more like an impossible cosmic alignment. It's just perfect.
The total solar eclipse is indeed a spectacular phenomenon from our vantage point on Earth. The reports we looked at really highlight just how striking it is that the moon appears precisely the right size in the sky to completely cover the sun during totality.
Exactly.
Not too big, which would hide the sun's corona, the atmosphere.
Yeah, you'd miss the best part.
And not too small, which would leave a ring of sunlight. It's an almost perfect fit. It's quite astonishing when you witness it.
It's like the universe put on a custom-made show just for us here on Earth. And the analysis points out that this exact size-to-distance relationship, the thing that results in this perfect visual fit, is, from a conventional scientific standpoint, considered a remarkable coincidence.
A coincidence, yeah. That's the term used.
And it's a temporary one, apparently. As the moon slowly drifts away from Earth, I think the report said about 1.5 inches per year.
That's the figure, yes. Very slowly moving away.
So its apparent size will decrease over millions of years. In a few million years, it will appear too small to completely cover the sun, and total solar eclipses, as we experience them today, they'll become a thing of the past.
That's correct. It's a specific configuration for our current geological epoch, really. Mm-hmm. And while eclipses of stars by moons happen elsewhere in the cosmos, especially, with giant planets that have loads of large moons.
Like Jupiter or Saturn.
Exactly. The specific conditions for a perfect total solar eclipse involving a rocky planet and its moon like ours are considered much less likely.
Yeah.
It requires a very particular set of circumstances regarding the size and distance of the satellite relative to its star and planet.
Okay, so that's solar eclipses. Then we have lunar eclipses, slightly different thing.
Right. Lunar eclipses occur when the moon passes entirely into Earth's dark central shadow, known as the umbra.
The umbra, right.
And Earth's umbral shadow extends really far out into space, about 1.38 million kilometers. The moon's average orbit is only around 384,000 kilometers away, so it's well within reach of that shadow.
Makes sense.
And during a total lunar eclipse, the moon often takes on that eerie red or coppery hue. You've probably seen it.
Oh, yeah, the blood moon.
Exactly. And that's not because light is being blocked entirely, but because sunlight is refracted or bent. as it passes through Earth's atmosphere. Our atmosphere scatters blue light more effectively than red light, like why the sky is blue. So the red light is preferentially bent into the umbral shadow, faintly illuminating the moon with that distinct color. These events, they happen during specific periods called eclipse seasons, which is when the alignment of the moon's orbital plane with Earth and the sun is just right.
It's all about alignment.
It really is. This alignment is related to what's called the line of nodes, where the moon's orbit intersects Earth's orbital plane around the sun. When that line points towards the sun, eclipses both solar and lunar can occur.
So, okay, on one hand, we have scientifically explained phenomena, tidal locking due to gravity, lunar eclipses because of orbits and Earth's atmosphere scattering light. Makes sense.
Yep, standard orbital mechanics and physics.
On the other hand, we have the total solar eclipse, this visually stunning event that relies on an apparent perfect size and distance thing, which conventionally is called a coincidence, and a temporary one, these seemingly precise behaviors and positions. They are what leads some people, looking at the data and the reports, to ask, is this really just chance? Or could there be something else, a deeper, maybe more deliberate explanation?
And that brings us directly to the central mystery that fuels this entire episode, a question echoed in some of the most unconventional ideas presented in our review of the material. Is the moon a purely natural celestial body formed through typical cosmic processes? Or is there evidence, or maybe just intriguing suggestions, that it was somehow intentionally placed in Earth orbit?
Let's lean into that question then. Let's explore some of the more provocative ideas found in this space. Perhaps the most well-known, the one that always comes up, is the hollowmoon hypothesis.
Ah, yes. This idea gained considerable traction, especially after the data returned from the Apollo missions. The primary piece of evidence frequently cited in support of this theory stems from the Apollo 12 mission back in 1969.
Right, the famous bell-ringing event. As the story goes, after the astronauts deployed seismic instruments on the surface, NASA decided to intentionally crash the ascent stage of the lunar module.
The LM, yeah, the part they used to get back up to the command module.
Right. Crashed it back down onto the moon. Reports describe this piece as weighing about 2.5 tons and impacting roughly 40 miles away from where the instruments were located.
And the resulting seismic activity was, well, to say the least, unexpected.
Yeah.
Very unexpected.
How so?
Instead of a simple thud or a shock wave that died down quickly like you'd expect hitting rock, the moon vibrated profoundly. It resonated, or rang, as many sources describe it, like a giant bell.
Like a bell, seriously.
That's the description often used. The initial shock wave peaked within about 8 minutes, but the vibrations continued for an astonishing duration, almost an hour, according to the descriptions.
An hour from a 2.5-ton impact.
An hour. And the signal detected by the seismometers was initially so faint that it had to be magnified 10 million times back on Earth to be properly analyzed. This particular event and the analysis of these vibrations became classified as one of the 4 types of moonquakes studied from the ALSEP data, the Apollo Lunar Surface Experiments package that the astronauts set up.
Wow. Okay, so the interpretation by proponents of the hollowmoon hypothesis is straightforward. This prolonged ringing suggests a hollow, or at least a non-solid, interior.
Right, it's the argument.
A solid object, like, I don't know, a billiard ball, when struck, transmits vibrations differently, they dampen quickly. But a hollow sphere, like an actual bell, will resonate for a long time. The fact that the moon rang like this is seen as compelling evidence that it's not a solid body throughout its depth.
That's the key argument from that perspective.
Yeah.
That the seismic response is incompatible with a uniformly solid interior structure, as we might intuitively understand it.
Which, okay, if you follow that line of thinking, that can lead you to an even more radical concept mentioned in our research, the spaceship moon theory.
Yes. This theory takes the idea of a non-natural moon to its logical extreme if you start from that hollow premise. It's sometimes attributed in the reports to Soviet scientists Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Shcherbakov back in the early 1970s.
Soviet scientists.
Yeah, though the full details of their original arguments weren't fully available in the specific material we reviewed. But the core claim is that the moon is not a naturally formed object at all.
It's artificial, a construct, like built.
That's the assertion found in this viewpoint. It suggests the moon is an alien-built structure, a massive artificial satellite deliberately placed in orbit around Earth millions, maybe billions of years ago.
Placed here for what?
Well, some iterations of this theory found in discussions posit it might be an ancient observation platform, or maybe even a colossal base station brought here from elsewhere, perhaps related to, I don't know, ancient conflicts or events on Earth mentioned in some fringe historical takes.
And this theory often incorporates the hollow idea, doesn't it? Claiming the moon is hollow precisely because it's artificial, like a fabricated shell housing machinery, control systems, maybe even internal living spaces, rather than being a solid natural rock. That perspective is certainly present in the analysis we looked at.
It is, very much so. And tied to this, another fascinating claim in some of the reports is that the reason we only ever see one side of the moon isn't just natural tidal locking, but that artificial technology within the structure actually prevents it from rotating freely.
To hide something.
That's the alleged purpose. To keep the far side, where hidden structures or even docked spaceships are supposedly located, permanently concealed from Earth-based observation. There are even more elaborate claims mentioned. Things like a secret government entity has been on the moon since the 1940s, finding and perhaps utilizing pre-existing alien ruins.
Okay, that's definitely wild stuff. Pushing the boundaries of conventional thought, for sure. Stepping back in time a bit, our research also included mentions of ancient records that seem to resonate with this idea of the moon appearing later in Earth's history.
That's right. Some accounts referenced in the reports claim ancient Akkadian texts discuss a time when the moon was not in the sky.
A time before the moon.
That's the claim. There's also mention of the concept of proselyne people, which refers to ancient cultures or legends that have myths or historical accounts of a period before the moon became a visible fixture. Now, obviously, these ancient accounts are often woven with mythology, and they're incredibly difficult to verify as literal historical records.
Sure, yeah.
But they are cited in the context of these unconventional theories as potential echoes, maybe, of a time when the Earth either didn't have a moon or when its appearance or position changed dramatically.
What about the people who actually went there, the Apollo astronauts?
Yeah.
Our research didn't contain specific documented claims of astronauts reporting feeling, paranormally watched on the moon.
No, nothing concrete like that in the reports we examined.
But it does offer insight into their experiences and the realities of the missions, like the perspective shared by Buzz Aldrin in reports we reviewed.
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin's comments, particularly from an Ask Me Anything session online, provide a very grounded, very human counterpoint to some of the more speculative claims.
What did he say?
Well, he speaks candidly about the reasons why manned lunar missions stopped after 1972. He cites primarily the drastic decrease in NASA funding since the Apollo era, going from roughly 4% of the U.S. national budget down to about 0.5% today. That's a huge drop.
Massive.
He highlights the tremendous progress in robotic exploration over the past 4 decades as a successful alternative. And he also expresses a vision for future lunar endeavors based on international cooperation, suggesting modular shared bases potentially located on both the near and far sides of the moon. That perspective stands in stark contrast to ideas of hidden national or alien bases, doesn't it?
Completely different vision, cooperation versus concealment.
Exactly. He's also openly discussed his interest in science fiction classics like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and his interactions with prominent science communicators like Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, showing a thoughtful engagement with both the reality and the speculation surrounding space.
And didn't he punch someone?
Ah, yes. Famously, the reports include the anecdote about him punching Dart Sibrel, a known moon landing hoax promoter who repeatedly harassed him, basically calling him a liar to his face. It really illustrates the intense public pressure and scrutiny the astronauts faced and still face.
Yeah, that incident really brings home the human dimension. Now, away from speculation about hidden structures or feelings, let's look at the moon's actual physical features, as described in scientific reports, like the lunar source book included in our review. What does that tell us?
Well, the scientific study gives us a detailed picture of the moon's surface, built up over decades. It describes vast mare basins, those dark patches you see.
The seas.
Right, which are not seas of water, but enormous impact craters that were later flooded by ancient basaltic lava flows billions of years ago. We see towering mountains, deep valleys, volcanic domes, countless impact craters ranging from microscopic pits to hundreds of kilometers wide, rills, which are these channel-like features, and the ubiquitous layer of fine dust and rocky debris called regolith covering almost everything.
Just pulverized rock, basically.
Essentially, yeah.
From billions of years of micrometeorite impacts. The analysis also details the composition of lunar rocks brought back by the Apollo missions, like the mare basalts and the unusual creep rocks, which are rich in potassium K, rare earth elements, RDE, and phosphorus P. Creep rocks, interesting name.
It is. And these descriptions paint a geological history shaped by impact, volcanism, and the harsh environment of space, providing scientific explanations for the features we observe. It looks like a geologically evolved albeit dead, world.
Okay, so we've explored the intriguing, sometimes wild fringe theories and touched on some factual details from the human missions and surface studies. Now, let's transition. How does conventional science, based on the evidence gathered over decades of study and exploration, explain some of these phenomena we've been talking about?
All right, let's look back to that Apollo 12 ringing event, that seismic data.
Yeah, the belt.
As noted in scientific reports, NASA scientists have a different explanation for why the moon vibrated the way it did after the impact. The prevailing scientific understanding is that the prolonged vibrations are primarily due to the moon's unique composition and structure specifically, its incredibly dry and rigid crust.
Dry and rigid, okay.
Unlike Earth, which has a more layered internal structure and significant amounts of water, water acts like a shock absorber, basically.
Right.
That helps to absorb and dampen seismic waves. The moon is much more solid and uniform, you could say, in its upper layers. It's lost most of its internal heat and volatiles. This rigidity allows seismic waves to travel farther and resonate for much longer periods compared to a body with more internal damping like Earth.
So it's not ringing because it's empty, but because it's stiff and lacks shock absorbers, like hitting a solid dry rock versus a wet sponge.
That's a decent analogy. Precisely. The absence of the mechanisms that would dampen seismic energy on Earth contributes to that extended reverberation. It's a property of the material and structure, not necessarily hollowness.
Fascinating. Okay, that makes geological sense. Now, let's tackle the biggest question from a scientific standpoint. Where did the moon come from in the first place? The leading hypothesis discussed in scientific literature is the giant impact hypothesis.
The giant impact hypothesis, often referred to as the GIH, is currently the most widely accepted scientific theory for the moon's formation, as outlined in various studies, including those published in PNAS and discussed by organizations like the American Scientific Affiliation.
Okay, what's the story?
This theory posits that very early in the solar system's history, perhaps around 4.5 billion years ago, towards the very end of Earth's own formation process, a colossal collision occurred. A Mars-sized protoplanet, sometimes nicknamed Theia, is thought to have collided with the nascent Earth, the early, still-forming Earth.
A Mars-sized object hitting Earth? That sounds less like a tap and more like cosmic violence.
Oh, it would have been an event of unimaginable scale. The GIH suggests that this oblique or glancing collision wasn't head-on, but powerful enough to eject vast quantities of material from both the impactor, Theia, and the early Earth's mantle into orbit around Earth.
So debris blasted into space.
Exactly. A massive cloud of superheated rock and vaporized material. Over time, this orbiting debris disk accreted under its own gravity. It clumped together to form the moon.
And what evidence supports such a dramatic event? That sounds like something out of a movie.
Well, scientific analysis of lunar samples, the rocks brought back by Apollo, has revealed key pieces of evidence that align with the GIH, as highlighted in reports. One of the most significant is the remarkable similarity in the isotopic composition of oxygen between Earth rocks and moon rocks.
Isotopes. Remind me.
Isotopes are variations of an element with different numbers of neutrons, like different flavors of oxygen. Each planet or body tends to have a unique isotopic fingerprint. If the moon was formed from material, primarily from a different body, Theia and Earth, you might expect their isotopic fingerprints for oxygen to be different.
Okay, that makes sense.
But they're almost identical. Traditionally, this nearly identical oxygen isotope ratio was actually seen as a challenge for the classic GIH model. It suggested the moon must have formed almost exclusively from Earth material, which was hard to explain, with a big impactor providing a lot of its own material.
So how does the theory handle that now?
Well, more recent refined models of the GIH, like those involving more vigorous mixing of the debris disk after the impact, or the formation occurring within a transient massive structure called a terrestrial synestia.
A synestia, what's that?
It's like a giant, rapidly spinning, donut-shaped cloud of vaporized rock, much larger than the Earth and Moon combined, that might have formed temporarily after the impact. These newer models propose mechanisms by which the ejected material from both the impactor and Earth could become thoroughly mixed before forming the moon.
Ah, so they mix together in this giant hot cloud first.
Potentially, yes, thereby explaining the isotopic match. Studies also mention other isotopic evidence, like tungsten isotopes, as supporting the GIH framework.
So scientists are actively refining the theory to fit the evidence, finding ways the giant impact could result in the isotopic similarities we see. It's not a closed case, but evolving.
Precisely. Science is always refining models based on new data and simulations.
Beyond just forming the moon, does the GIH explain anything else about Earth itself?
It does. Potentially in very significant ways. As the American Scientific Affiliation source discusses, the energy input from such a massive impact would have been immense, just unimaginable heat.
Must have melted everything.
Pretty much. The added heat and potentially a fresh supply of radioactive isotopes from Theia could have significantly influenced the early Earth's internal processes. It's thought that this event may have played a crucial role in initiating or perhaps significantly boosting plate tectonics on Earth.
Plate tectonics? How?
By adding so much heat and churning the mantle, plate tectonics is vital because it helps to build continents and creates diverse land environments. Without it, Earth might have ended up as a completely water-covered world, a water world.
Wow. No continents.
Possibly. The formation of landmasses is seen as absolutely essential for the evolution of land-based life, so the impact might have indirectly paved the way for us.
That's a profound connection. The very event that likely formed our moon might also have helped create the conditions, the continents necessary for life to eventually thrive on land. That's huge.
It is a potentially very deep connection.
But the reports we reviewed also point out a potential challenge or maybe a nuance to the GIH, don't they? Something about probability?
Yeah. Yes, they do. The American Scientific Affiliation source notes that while the GIH is the leading theory, some analyses suggest the statistical probability of a large moon forming from a glancing collision of precisely the right type, the right angle, the right speed to create that orbiting debris disk that then forms a stable moon.
Well, that might be quite low.
How low? One estimate mentioned in the reports puts this probability around 10 to the minus 8. That's 1 in 100 million.
1 in 100 million, that is low.
It is. This low probability estimate leads some researchers to continue questioning whether this seemingly unique event is the full story, or if other factors, or perhaps alternative models for moon formation, are still worth exploring, even if GIH explains many things well.
That low probability estimate is striking, even if the theory is the best we have so far. Okay, let's dig a bit more into the moon's physical stuff, its composition and internal structure, based on scientific findings. You mentioned the Maria.
Right. Based on materials like the Lunar Sourcebook and other reports, our scientific understanding of the moon's composition comes largely from analyzing those Apollo rocks. We know, for example, that the vast dark plains, the Maria, were formed by very fluid basaltic lavas. These erupted from partial melting deep within the moon's interior, maybe 100 to 400 kilometers down.
Lots of melting.
And these lavas were particularly fluid, much runnier than Earth basalts because of their chemical makeup richer in iron, poorer in silicon and aluminum. That allowed them to flow easily like thin sheets and cover those huge impact basins. The textures of these rocks and the presence of unique rock types like those Crete basalts we mentioned, found as fragments, provide clues about the moon's thermal history and cooling processes billions of years ago.
Okay, so we know a fair bit about the crust and mantle rocks. How does this scientific understanding of the moon's internal structure directly address the hollow idea?
Well, scientific analysis, particularly using seismology, not just from Apollo, but also analyzing how meteorites impact it now, and gravity data from orbiting spacecraft, indicates that the moon is definitely not hollow in the way proponents of that theory suggest.
Okay. What do they think is inside?
Well, our understanding of the very deep interior is still considered somewhat rudimentary compared to our knowledge of Earth's core. It's harder to get good data.
Sure.
The data confirms the moon has a complex layered structure. It's understood to have a small, solid, metallic inner core, probably mostly iron, surrounded by a layer of molten, or at least partially molten, metal, and then a thick, solid, rocky mantle and the crust on top.
So core, mantle, crust, like Earth, just different proportions.
Exactly. Any localized anomalies in density or composition that seismic waves detect are thought to be residual effects of intense bombardment by asteroids and comets throughout its history, or maybe variations from its initial formation, not evidence of an artificial structure. The scientific consensus, based on all available geophysical data, is firmly against the moon being a hollow shell.
So the ringing is due to its material properties, being dry and rigid, not emptiness, and it has a solid core. That provides strong scientific counterarguments to the hollow and artificial theories based on that seismic evidence.
That's the mainstream scientific view, yes.
What about that other apparent perfect alignment, the one for total solar eclipses? Science just calls that a coincidence. Seems unsatisfying somehow.
Yes, from a scientific perspective, that perfect visual alignment during total solar eclipses is seen as a remarkable but ultimately chance occurrence. It's the result of the moon's specific physical size happening to be in a specific orbital position at a specific distance from Earth, such that its apparent size in our sky happens to match the apparent size of the much larger but much farther away sun.
Just lucky geometry for us right now.
Essentially, yes. Analysis of orbital dynamics explains precisely how and when eclipses happen based on the known paths and distances of Earth, Moon, and Sun, but doesn't indicate any deliberate fine-tuning beyond the natural forces governing their orbits over billions of years. It's a consequence of the initial conditions and evolution of the Earth-Moon system.
So while some of the moon's behaviors and appearances are really striking and might seem improbable at first glance, the scientific framework, supported by extensive data from missions, provides natural explanations for phenomena like the seismic ringing and the visual spectacle of eclipses. The origin story, the giant impact hypothesis, is still being refined with new data and models, but it grounds the moon's existence firmly within the realm of natural astrophysical processes. But let's pause for a moment. Let's fully embrace the premise of some of these other theories we've discussed. If we entertain the possibility, just for argument's sake, as suggested by ideas like the spaceship moon theory, that the moon isn't a purely natural object but was somehow engineered and placed there, what could be the implications of such a radical idea? What would that even mean?
Well, let's consider what we know about objects that are intentionally placed in orbit. Our research defines artificial satellites as man-made objects launched into orbit for specific, deliberate purposes.
Like communication satellites, GPS.
Exactly. Communications, navigation like GPS, scientific research satellites, Earth observation platforms like weather satellites, or the International Space Station. These objects are designed and positioned to perform functions beneficial or necessary to us on Earth or for exploration. Reports even mention that sometimes spinning a satellite is done deliberately to help stabilize it using gyroscopic effects.
Okay, so an artificial satellite serves a purpose. The spaceship moon theory takes this to the absolute extreme, claiming the moon itself is this kind of artificial satellite, but on a scale far beyond any human capability.
Precisely. And if such a massive object were deliberately placed in orbit, what purpose could it possibly serve, especially for a planet like Earth? This is where the discussion connects back to the profound impact the moon actually has on Earth's environment and consequently on the conditions necessary for life.
Right, we touched on this.
Reports highlight several critical roles the moon plays in making Earth a habitable world.
The tides are the most obvious one, right? You see them every day at the beach.
The tides are a huge one, absolutely.
Yeah.
The moon's strong gravitational pull is the primary driver of Earth's ocean tides. And geological evidence suggests these tides have been a constant feature of Earth for millions, if not billions of years. The constant churning of the oceans due to tidal forces has played a significant, albeit complex, role in Earth's geological and biological history, mixing nutrients, shaping coastlines, maybe even influencing early life.
But its influence goes way beyond just pushing water around, right? You mentioned it affects the very stability of our planet.
Absolutely. Perhaps one of the most crucial roles highlighted in the reports is the moon's significant influence on stabilizing Earth's axial tilt.
Our tilt. The reason we have seasons.
Exactly. Earth is tilted on its axis relative to its orbital plane around the sun, about 23.5 degrees, and this tilt is what gives us seasons. Without a large, relatively close moon like ours, simulations suggest Earth's axial tilt could potentially undergo much more dramatic and chaotic shifts over geological timescales. It could wobble much more.
What would that do?
Well, while the sun's gravity tends to reduce axial tilt on planets closer to it, the moon's powerful tidal effects are thought to have helped damp out potentially larger oscillations in Earth's tilt early in its history. This stability in axial tilt is incredibly important. It leads to relatively stable and predictable climate patterns over millions of years. It avoids extreme and rapid swings between periods of intense glaciation, ice ages covering everything, and scorching heat that could make the planet inhospitable. A stable climate is considered a key factor in allowing complex life to evolve and persist over vast periods.
So, the moon isn't just a pretty face in the sky. It controls our tides, which affects ocean currents and coastlines, and it acts like a giant gyroscope, preventing our planet from wobbling wildly and keeping our climate stable enough for complex life to develop over billions of years. That's fundamental.
It's incredibly fundamental to Earth's long-term habitability as we understand it.
And going back to the giant impact theory again, the event that formed the moon might have added the heat and isotopes that helped drive plate tectonics, which built the continents necessary for land life.
That's right. The potential interconnectedness is remarkable. The reports connect these ideas. The giant impact forming the moon may have provided the energy for plate tectonics, creating land. The presence of the large moon then provided tidal sources and, critically, stabilized the planet's tilt, ensuring a climate stable enough for life to not just emerge, but evolve into complex forms and spread across those continents over eons.
Which leads us back to that incredibly radical question, prompted by considering an engineered moon, as presented in some of the theories. Given its seemingly essential multifaceted influence on Earth habitability from tides and continental formation facilitation to climate stabilization, could life on Earth have evolved because of a moon that was intentionally constructed and placed here, designed specifically to make Earth a cradle for life?
It's a powerful concept, isn't it? It completely challenges our understanding of cosmic origins and purpose. It's a natural extrapolation if you accept the premise of an artificial moon based on some of the more unconventional ideas circulating in the reports we looked at.
Stepping further into the realm of the unconventional, our exploration included looking at claims that delve into, well, paranormal means of information gathering and alleged whistleblower accounts.
Right. Reports we reviewed mentioned figures like Ingo Swann. He is often discussed in the context of remote viewing.
Remote viewing, like seeing things with your mind.
That's the description, yes. An attempt to use paranormal or extrasensory perception to gather information about a distant or unseen target. Swann's name is linked in these discussions to ideas concerning the moon, extraterrestrials, and a concept referred to as daughters of Ma, although the specifics weren't detailed.
So he's connected to remote viewing and these lunar and ET topics in some reports. What about more specific claims, like him using remote viewing to actually see structures on the moon's far side? Was that in the research?
While Ingo Swann's association with remote viewing, the moon, and ET discussions is noted in the reports, the specific claim about him seeing alien structures on the far side of the moon through remote viewing was not detailed or substantiated within the particular materials we reviewed for this episode. So we can only report on his association with these themes as presented in the information available to us, not confirm those specific alleged results.
Got it. And our research also touched upon claims related to alleged secret missions, like maybe something called Apollo 20?
Yes. Discussions surrounding lunar mysteries often include claims about an alleged secret Apollo 20 mission, often associated with someone named William Rutledge, which supposedly encountered alien ruins and even a sleeping being on the moon. However, similar to the specific details of Ingo Swann's claims about structures, these specific claims regarding an Apollo 20 mission or the evidence for alien ruins and beings were not found or detailed within the particular reports, scientific papers, or accounts that formed the basis of our analysis for this specific episode.
So those stories exist out there but weren't in the material we focused on.
Correct. We note that these claims exist within the broader conversation about lunar anomalies, but they weren't substantiated in the specific materials we focused on.
These types of claims, whether about remote viewing discoveries or secret missions, exist within a really complex information landscape. And our research included some insights into how information, including potentially questionable claims, can be shaped and disseminated.
Indeed. Concepts like psychological operations, or PSYOP, were mentioned in some of the background material. According to reports, PSYOP involves planned activities using communication and other means to influence the perceptions and behaviors of foreign audiences to achieve specific political or military objectives.
Influencing people's minds, basically.
Essentially, yes. While legally restricted domestically in many places, these operations involve developing and spreading media, and they are most effective when integrated into larger strategic plans. They can involve techniques like propaganda and disinformation. Examples in historical accounts include distributing leaflets during wartime or alleged campaigns to influence public opinion on certain issues.
And there's also this concept of narrative attack campaigns. Sounds serious.
That concept, described in some business analysis reports we saw, focuses on investigating and countering harmful or threatening narratives in the information space. This can range from protecting a company's reputation to identifying campaigns designed for financial manipulation, like spreading false rumors about shortages to cause panic buying or damaging market confidence in a stock.
So using stories as weapons, almost.
In a sense, these analyses use tools to identify narrative risks and reveal blind spots in how information is being spread and perceived, often online.
So looking at these ideas, PSYOP and narrative manipulation provides a framework for understanding the environment where theories, both conventional and unconventional, about something as mysterious and evocative as the moon exist. It doesn't mean any specific theory is disinformation,
Not at all.
but it serves as a vital reminder that information can be deliberately shaped or spread, whether for known objectives like military or political goals, or even for less clear reasons. It encourages us and you listening to think critically about the information we encounter.
Absolutely. As highlighted in reports on intelligence analysis, critical thinking is paramount. It involves rigorously testing hypotheses against available evidence, being acutely aware of our own cognitive and cultural biases that can color our perception.
We all have them.
We all do. And being willing to question assumptions and consider alternative viewpoints. It's about striving for an objective understanding of the information, not simply accepting claims at face value or mirroring what we might want to believe. Applying this critical lens is essential when navigating complex topics like the mysteries of the moon, where established scientific understanding meets profound speculation and sometimes, well, deliberate noise.
As we wrap up this exploration, let's bring our focus back to Earth and our unique relationship with that silent sphere in the sky, keeping in mind all the different perspectives we've explored tonight.
It's a remarkable fact, noted in reports, that humans haven't ventured beyond about 1,200 miles from Earth since 1972.
Only 1,200 miles.
Compared to the moon's distance of nearly 250,000 miles. We just stopped sending people there after the Apollo program wrapped up.
Which is a question that comes up a lot. Why did we stop going to the moon after the Apollo missions concluded in 1972? The reasons discussed in the materials seem pretty multifaceted.
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin's perspective, as we mentioned, points directly to the dramatic reduction in NASA's budget allocation following the Apollo era. He argues that the immense national effort required for Apollo demanded a percentage of the GDP that is simply not allocated to space exploration today. It was hugely expensive.
A Cold War investment, really.
To a large extent. Reports also indicate that the cancellation of the later planned Apollo missions, Apollo 18, 19, 20, were originally planned.
Right.
Wasn't a sudden decision following Apollo 17, but was announced years earlier as part of broader cost-cutting measures, particularly as the significant national prestige goal of landing a human on the moon and beating the Soviets had already been achieved.
The race was won, essentially.
In the eyes of many politicians and the public, yes. The focus, for various reasons, including cost-effectiveness and technological advancements, shifted towards robotic exploration of the solar system probes to Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and near-Earth space activities like the Space Shuttle and later the ISS.
So conventional explanations point to financial priorities and strategic shifts for why we stopped sending humans. Makes practical sense. But if we circle back one last time to the spaceship moon theory from our review, the idea that the moon is an artificial observation platform, the answer to the question, is the moon still being observed, takes on a completely different, maybe even chilling new dimension.
Indeed. If that theory were true, then the answer would be a definitive yes. It would presumably be under continuous observation by whatever intelligence placed it there. From a conventional scientific perspective, of course, we absolutely continue to observe the moon extensively. Robotic missions map its surface, analyze its composition from orbit, powerful telescopes monitor its features, and scientists constantly study the data from past and present missions. We haven't stopped looking at it. Yeah. But the question of whether other entities are using the moon to observe us remains squarely within the realm of speculation and the unconventional theories we've discussed tonight. Science finds no evidence for it, but the idea persists in some quarters.
It leaves you with a haunting thought as you look up at that familiar ancient face in the night sky. What if the greatest deception isn't some elaborate conspiracy down here on Earth, but something far grander, right above us every night, watching, waiting, and quietly guiding the story of humanity and our planet? That's it for this journey beyond the known. If the unknown calls to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. There's so much more waiting to be discovered.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe look up at the moon tonight, think about what we've talked about, see what you feel.